I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Jenna Furst and Julia Willoughby Nason, who are the directors of LuLaRich on Amazon Prime, about the LuLaRoe legging company and everything that, and the multi-level marketing scheme that it was. First question I want to ask is, why is it misguided to think that cults only involve religions?
That's a great question. Charlie, I think when you lift the hood up in our culture, most of what you find in culture is a cult, but I think where we start to kind of, find more fertile ground for documentaries and investigations and criminal findings is when those highly controlling environments, abuse people, mislead them, deceive them, cause them to lose a lot of money, cause them to, hurt their families and hurt their communities. So I think in this case, cult is probably one of the most pervasive things we experience in late stage capitalism, but there's some cults that do more damage than others.
And so I think one of the things that's most surprising about the series is that you actually got Diane and Mark Stidham to actually participate, sit down for an interview. And did that take a lot of persuasion to have them participate in the project?
No, we didn't have to persuade them. We just were very direct and talked to them about, like, hey, there's these controversies about you. We're doing this documentary. Here's our past work, fire fraud, etc. We like to show a full picture of everybody and have them speak to their own story, as opposed to us just telling their story without them. I think that they wanted to get ahead of the narrative, essentially, because there was so much controversy, and speak for themselves, and understood that we were really going to sit with them for a while. Like, we sat with them for about 6 or 7 hours in their interview. So they appreciated that invitation, essentially. We didn't have to persuade. Luckily.
Did you try to reach out to, since it really was a family operation, did you try to reach out to other members of the family to see if they wanted to talk about their side?
Yeah, definitely. We did. And we did talk to other family members. Essentially, it was a 4-part series, so we could only fit in so much. I mean, there's just so much talk about a second season, a scripted version, because of the content that was left on the cutting room floor, and because just their family alone is a fascinating, docu-follow, or whatever kind of show you would want to contextualize it as. But yes, we did reach out to family members, and we wanted to know more.
Yeah, Sam Shultz.
Other people wanted to know more too.
Yeah, Sam Shultz, the nephew, had a very inside perspective, in the forming of the company, and a lot of things people didn't see. And the family itself, just Diane's generation and the her children and the grandchildren is about 100 people. So, it's a lot of perspectives, and I think that ultimately they are the leaders of the family, and that's the culture they created, is that, Diane and Mark, are seen as the sort of ultimate authority. And I think what's so interesting is you have family businesses, but when family businesses become multi-billion-dollar companies, and the only people in the C-suite are the men from that family, regardless of what their experience is, I think that you can probably see how train wrecks are inevitable.
Yeah, most definitely. It's interesting you bring up about, that whole family thing, because it's mentioned in the documentary about, they're a Mormon family, and Mark would be quoting things and comparing himself to Joseph Smith, but it really feels like that was a much heavier gloss on things. Did that really color a lot of that, of what they were all about in terms of that religiosity?
Yes.
I think that, well, just to quickly, I think that they really were all about the entrepreneurship, and about like that positive language in terms of like this performance art around like just wish it to be true, and it kind of folds into some of the Joseph Smith and that era of, and later eras of self-help and just, positive thinking. So it kind of like, it morphed into something else out of their religion. I think it became like a cult of personality, essentially.
Yeah, I think Mormons, have been persecuted, right? And so sometimes they get turned into, even us describing them as Mormons,
Right.
I think people who are members of the Church of Latter-day Saints call themselves LDS. And, I think the irony of the LDS community is they have been the staging ground for multi-level marketing from the beginning. And the reason why is because so much of that culture promotes a patriarchal order in which the women are not supposed to work. And so when the women are not supposed to work and have a career, this is viewed as a way to make extra money.
Well, I would just like to say women are not supposed to get paid for their work.
Right.
That's
Women
very
are
different
obviously
than
working
working
around the clock, doing tons of different things. But I'm just referring to this patriarchal lens. My word choice may not be exactly right, but the lens of this stay-at-home mom, this sort of working on your spare time, keeping your kids first. And here's a great way to make extra money was what propelled the Tupperware parties. It's what propelled Amway. It's what propelled Mary Kay. And I think that there was a roadmap out of that into other communities that may not have been LDS, but LDS is where you find many victims of multi-level marketing, so much so that Utah, created a whole unit of criminal investigation for multi-level marketing, because of, the connections to the LDS community.
I think one of the surprising things about the documentary is that, is that there is this very humorous tone to it. It's not necessarily, I would say, a comedic, but there are definitely very humorous parts, even as different subjects are talking about various things. And I'm wondering, when you first started the project, did you think that the final product would have as much of that humorous tone to it as it ended up having?
Yes. And I think that, Julia and I, interestingly enough, when we were kind of coming towards rounding the bend on the series, we were like, this is a true comedy. We came up with a new genre, right? Everybody knows true crime. Everybody knows true con, and we called it a true comedy. And the reality is that we saw so many similarities with Fire Fraud, which we saw as both a true con and a true comedy, that we understood the language for telling a story like this. But I think, to your point, people enjoy laughing. And I think laughing is healthy, especially when we're willing to laugh at ourselves. And I think that none of our films ever poke fun at people and laugh at them as a spectacle or as a point of exploitation. We're ultimately laughing at ourselves, because in the end, all of our films present a world in which there are no bad people who do horrible things. And we just need to pick those people out of the lineup and throw them away forever, take the key and throw it into the ocean. And then all the problems will be gone. That's not the world we live in. We're actually part of the problem. And I think that all of our work has, shown that. And so if you look at the content ecosystem right now, documentaries we're in the golden age, and there's a lot of really intense storytelling. We've done that type of storytelling. You mentioned Welcome to Leith. We also did Time, the Khalif Browder story. We did, the Trayvon Martin story, Rest in Power, with his family. We've covered some really intense, important, The Pharmacist, about the opioid epidemic. But what we found is that if you want to really reach people and you want to be able to have a conversation that can get into the most amount of homes around the world, if you can allow people to laugh a little bit, that it helps us all take our guard down and actually take the content more seriously and not put up the wall, which is happening, which is, hey, if that's intense or that involves something about people being hurt, I don't want to look at it, And I think that people, rightfully so, are so bombarded with the 24-hour news cycle that they need to find a way into these stories that feels, kind and gentle enough to be able to go the whole way. Because we want nothing more than for people to finish the fourth part, to get all the way through the series, to realize by the second and third part that, hey, this is actually criminal. People got hurt, people lost their lives, people lost their homes. And seduction and comedy and goofiness was all part of the con in the beginning. That's how people fell for it.
Exactly. We wanted to kind of do the same thing that the founders did with their audience with building an MLM. We wanted to build that with our film audience, and then elaborate. And then once they're in, understand like the depth and the stakes that were at play in the story.
Well, Julia and Jenner, thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to talking with you in our panel in just a little bit.
Thank you so much.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Bye.